Cool. Hi everyone. This month I'm super excited to introduce you to Ben, who's the founder and creative director at 11, and 11 are a DTC e-commerce agency. So welcome to the Pep Talk, Ben. Great to have you with us today.
Hey Georgie, thanks for having me. Hello to everyone listening, watching.
Amazing. So yeah, we're going to dive into kind of how a bit more about what you guys do at 11, how DTC brands can kind of best use or best optimize the strategy in order to create a really seamless customer experience. I know you guys are really expert in the sort of the design, branding, Shopify side of things. So yeah, excited to kind of dive into that in a bit more detail. And I guess maybe as a first question or first thing to talk about, could you give us a little bit more background into 11 and your role there and how it all works?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, we're a creative e-commerce agency for DTC brands, and we kind of work across three pillars in e-commerce: acquisition, conversion, and retention. And that kind of leads me to being quite strategic in my day-to-day here as a founder at the agency. And so that's kind of working on kind of brand and e-commerce strategies and helping brands hopefully be guided towards successful launches, be it kind of like startup launches or product launches through to optimizations. So we're quite busy in that kind of world, and that's kind of keeps me busy there.
Cool, nice. And yeah, I was actually, just before we hit record, I was telling you I was having a look at your website and saw the 11 momentum method, and I was really keen to ask you about that and just go into if you could tell us a little bit more about how it works. And I love a formula. We also have a framework which we work towards, but I think it's always really helpful just to understand more about the background and how you guys sort of operate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, having a kind of formula and a method is like really helpful because it kind of makes it nice and digestible for all the brands we work with. And our momentum method is designed to essentially deliver commercial results for the DTC brands that we're partnering up with. And any brand at any stage of their life cycle, be it startups through to enterprise, can kind of drop into the method. So be it someone who's kind of starting up, we go through discoveries, understanding the what, why, and the how, and so on, through to more technical discoveries, and then ultimately delivering all of their work or all of their brands, across Shopify e-commerce with a content creation strategy that essentially feeds that kind of monster to get traffic coming to the site, people getting onto the site, e-commerce strategies to convert those customers, and how we retain. And that's kind of a cyclical, never-ending kind of process, because cultures change, design trends change, tech stacks improve and change, and so it's that momentum is designed to continuously evolve as we go, and we go on that journey with the brand to essentially move them forward all the time.
That's really interesting, because I think often you sort of think about branding as sort of a one and done type thing, and you get your brand and that's it, and you can sort of forget about it. But actually that's not the case at all. As you've just pointed out, it's very much kind of evolving thing as companies are growing and scaling, and the branding, it makes sense that that's a sort of key thing to sort of evolve and change as well. And what are some of the kind of the key factors that brands should consider when designing their strategy and branding to make sure they can really effectively communicate their brand story, their value proposition? Are there sort of, I guess maybe going back to your framework or your formula, there must be some kind of key elements that are just that are critical for them to make sure they get right?
Yeah, I think that really boils down to kind of quite simply why this brand is doing it. Beyond trying to make a quick buck, are they helping somebody via the product they're selling or a service they're offering? And it's then on top of that, how they're doing it and how they're doing it differently. So if we can marry up those kind of pieces, and then those brands can communicate it effectively, that's when those are the key parts to really separate themselves against the competition. It's essentially being distinctive in that space ultimately. And in the world of D2C, there's so much competition, and you can quite easily fall into the same look and feel as everybody else. And that's why in that method we were speaking about, our momentum method is always cyclical. You've always got to go back and just kind of reassess, why you're doing it first and foremost, because that doesn't often change. The way you go about it might change in the future, so those kind of tactical pieces will change, but the foundation, the heartbeat of the brand ultimately should be the same, and that's those key parts to communicating it correctly.
Yeah, interesting. I think you're right. It's so easy for brands to sort of, that there is almost like a DTC formula now in terms of a lot of them look the same and sound the same, and kind of moving away from that and being a bit more disruptive is, I guess, gets more and more challenging the more and more noise that's in the pool. So going back to the kind of the why and the mission makes a lot of sense in terms of differentiating yourself.
Yeah, it can be overlooked quite a lot, I find. It's people probably jump to the kind of end of the process, which is Shopify store, products, and kind of tactics there. But actually, anyone can have that space. It's again, like I said, why would they buy you over somebody else?
Yeah, interesting. And then you guys will translate that sort of that brand and that strategy into then their Shopify e-com store and make sure that that's all together.
Yeah, absolutely. So that kind of comes back to understanding the kind of branding strategy and the technical discovery, combining those to deliver a user experience content strategy ultimately, and that flow of how people can educate themselves about this brand and how, again, they are different to someone else and what are those key USPs, and it's all easily found as well. So in terms of the world of Shopify, obviously it's a great out-of-the-box solution, and you can do so much on it as well beyond going from the out of the box. And it's marrying the technical executions to that brand's needs. There's no point in having all the bells and whistles on your website if customers aren't using it. It's those customers and making sure that you are speaking and listening to those, and so that store is doing the right functions for them.
Yeah, interesting. And do you have any sort of top tips or any trends that you're seeing of things that are working really well when it comes to e-com creative, and maybe clients you're working with yourself or other brands that are really nailing it at the moment?
Creative is top tips, I'd say, are the simple ones. You're selling a product, so keep that front and center, clear, unobstructed, allow people to be able to see it in all its glory. So, different angles, open it up, how it arrives on your doorstep. So it's that kind of end-to-end visualization of that product. That's really important. And those should be just, things that it's a tick box everyone should just be doing. And then some other kind of creative bits I'd probably say is through photography and how those brands can present their product, particularly if there's any unique selling points that are quite difficult or maybe a little bit intangible. It's kind of being clever there. So that could be through animation. It could be through just some video post-production, or kind of bringing across some user-generated content and marrying that all together and throwing it into the mix to kind of give a more of a fuller ecosystem of that experience to understand what it is, because we're trying to obviously communicate through a digital platform, and it's like you do lose, for example, like comfort's really hard to get across, or taste, things like that. So it's being creative in those spaces, and it's different for every brand, but ultimately if you put that product front and center, that's the best way for it all to come through.
Yeah, makes sense. And again, I think that's something that often gets overlooked. Often there's a lot of, again, noise, sort of fluff around on a website that isn't really needed, and actually just having the product or service sort of front and center, as you say, is often keeping it simple potentially is easier than or is better than trying to overcomplicate with tons of information.
Yeah, and it can get overcomplicated sometimes when you're going to bring in e-commerce strategies. There's lots of marketing pieces that can be implemented on the sites that can overwhelm and clutter. You have like lots of pop-ups to loyalty sections and do this, do that, when really you just need to streamline that flow. And then, as you know well, like segmenting those customers post-purchase to communicate to them correctly. And that's another space you can be creative in terms of like the content delivered after. Email is a nice space where you can really do some fun things there, and it doesn't have to be selling all the time. It can be value driven stuff. It might be a product that is quite unique in how it's used, so creative ways to use it, or if it's food, what can it be mixed with ingredients to make this, that, and the other. So that's where the creative is more than just colors on a page and a font. It's the kind of fuller ecosystem of like communication ultimately.
Yeah, makes sense. Interesting. And that kind of brings me on to my last question, which is, so a lot of what we focus on is around customer retention and getting customers come back multiple times. Can you tell us a little bit more about the role that you guys play in sort of helping brands create those unforgettable moments with their customers to turn one-time purchases into brand advocates? How does the sort of the brand and the creative and that sort of strategy come into customer retention?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good question. And there's probably not one simple answer for this one, because there's lots of different channels that have to come into play to make this work. Going way back to the beginning of this conversation about asking about what makes things like how to communicate properly, it's all about the why. So first you've got to have a foundation of why that brand is doing it. And then on top of that, the kind of creative executions to get them become a long-term value customer would be the drip feeding of that valuable content throughout, or new product releases, anything that benefits those customers again and again and again. And it's at the time that's right for them. So through personalization, ultimately, we don't want to bombard the entire customer list with a sales piece when they're they've just purchased or something like that, or if they're on subscriptions, which is a great way to obviously have a runway as a brand to understand your financials. But as a customer, it's great because you go through a product in subscription world, it's something that's consumable typically. So it's just there on your doorstep. Again, that seamless experience is nice to have, but giving the customer the choice as well through that. So pausing, increasing, or just indefinitely stopping is really helpful, because no one wants to feel like they're being told what to do. Customers like to have that choice. As I say, it's kind of drip feeding through all these different channels. So it's subscriptions, it's loyalty pieces, it's generally good content through email, and it also can be quite educational as well, in terms of, again, if this product is quite unique, how do we get the customer to have the right products? We don't just want to push products onto people for the sake of making sales. They might be one-time purchases and they have a bad experience and never come back again. But if we tailor that journey correctly, and that could be through kind of type form questionnaires, if it's more supplement-based pieces, or if it's more high-end ticketed items, we kind of want to see it maybe firsthand, so you can do one-to-one video communications and book appointments with customer service representatives to help understand a bit more about that product that you might not be able to get at a first glance. So as I say, there's no one space or one kind of tactic that will do it. It's the combination of everything together. And it's also making sure that it's right for that brand. So not, like I say, just doing everything because it's trendy and someone else is doing it. It's got to fit your experience. And that experience is also through the store itself. So we also apply a lot of kind of design psychology in terms of helping kind of these loyal customers come back. We don't want to make it difficult for them. So it's making sure they understand what's a bestseller, which is sometimes overlooked to most affordable or valuable in terms of buying in increasing average order values. So the customer will get discounts, the brand will get better order values, and so on. So those kind of pieces all coming back into play. And again, wherever it gives a positive for the customer, that's the real win.
Yeah, for sure. I think, as with many things, there's never one size fits all, and there's never one silver bullet of an answer. So interesting. Obviously, it's a combination of lots of different elements. I think the key thing that I'm taking away from this is from a brand's perspective, is having that kind of key mission and understanding of their why. And once that you've got that nailed down and are super clear on what that looks like, it's almost kind of is that first starting point. You can always go back to it and adjust and tweak, but having a kind of clear sense of purpose sounds like it's one of the really
I think you can wrap it all up into purpose. Absolutely, is being clear in that space.
Amazing. Thanks, Ben. Been super to chat to you, and loads of really interesting insights there. So amazing. Thank you for coming on Pep Talks.
Thanks for being here. Really enjoyed it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.